Hey there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back. I'm your host, PattSun, and today we're gonna be taking a look at r/divorce, where OP's wife made one ridiculous demand. Let's begin. We're married for 1.5 years. I refused my wife's open marriage, and now we're divorcing in less than 3 months. Posted by Reddit user Fantastic Plant.
I am posting here because I have no idea what to do. I am in a state of panic and grief. I just lost my mom a month before all this went down. The wife could barely hold it together through my loss and hasn't even given me time to grieve my mom, and now I'm grieving my marriage. I feel stuck because I have spent all my time and money on this sinking ship. I don't know how I'm going to get out of here or what rights I have. The wife has lawyers on retainer for herself, so I am terrified of fighting her and have wanted this process to be as smooth as possible. The wife is a narcissist and a good one at that. There's a lot more to this situation than I can share. It's so multifaceted. She dumped me on our 2-year anniversary this week and still wants to do the couple's spa day shit she had planned. I would prefer she just give me some money to get out of here. She owns the house we live in, bought it just before we married, and my name has never been put on it. I don't want the house. I don't want anything but the things I brought with me and have bought while married. It's not a lot. She is refusing to help by giving me a cushion to get out of here. All the while she is on social media, changed her status to separated, and planned a trip with a poly couple before we even discussed divorce. I feel as though she has had this planned and wants her cake and eat it too. While she's out doing God knows what, I'm stuck home taking care of the animals and her child. She knows I'm stuck. Can you help me help myself? I'm so lost. I know I need to disconnect and separate myself from her. I'm going to stay in the guest bedroom. Just from here I don't know what to do. I am employed but have missed a lot of work because of my mom's funeral in another state, and this divorce has been eating me alive. I have no savings and my credit cards are maxed out from spending on the house and things for us as a married couple. I feel like such a fool. TLDR, I'm not willing to open the marriage. We decided to divorce because I won't compromise on monogamy. I am broke and can't escape this hell. I'm panicking and falling apart at the seams.
Look, OP, I don't want to piss on your already shitty situation, but you kinda put yourself in this shit show. You knew she was a narcissist. You knew that she was a single mom, and yet you still married the bitch. You maxed out all of your credit cards knowing full well that you don't have any savings. Come on, dude. You have got to be better than this. The reason that she wants an open marriage is because she wants permission to freely fuck anyone she wants. She doesn't want to hide it anymore. That's right, OP. I sincerely believe she's getting ran through your entire marriage. But I am proud of you for sticking to your guns and refusing her proposal. Anyway, you said you were only married for 2 years and have no children together? OP, you literally have nothing to worry about, as there can't be that much to fight over. Get a lawyer and set up a payment plan if you're hurting for money. If you get any inheritance from your mom's passing, do not let her have access to it. Use it to start anew. And now for today's second story. 2 tampons means my marriage is over. Posted by Reddit user Capable Elephant.
I have been with my husband for 7 years, married for 4. I've never had reason to suspect he was unfaithful to me or even remotely dissatisfied with our marriage. He likes to joke that we're still living the honeymoon phase nearly 5 years and 2 kids in. I wouldn't have questioned that or him were it not for a surprise I found in his car last month. When buckling our daughter into her car seat, I noticed something slotted between the cushions. I pulled it out and saw that it was a tampon. This wouldn't have been so unusual had I not had an IUD that has stopped my period for the past year, and I didn't even recognize the wrapper style. I brought it to my husband's attention and he didn't seem to understand what it was, let alone why I was holding it, until I told him where I'd found it and why I was almost certain it wasn't mine. He shrugged and said it probably belonged to his coworker, Fiona. It's not uncommon for my husband to carpool to lunch with his coworkers, and we're both fairly close to Fiona and her husband, so I figured it was entirely possible the tampon had slipped out of her purse whenever he had driven with them or offered her a ride. No big deal. I put it out of my mind until we had dinner with Fiona and her husband a couple of weeks later. I had sincerely wanted to believe my husband. I just couldn't get over the way it had been tucked in the seat and how my husband had seemed not to have any regard for it whatsoever. Maybe playing dumb, I don't know. I did something that I now feel kind of crazy for doing. I faked an emergency and asked Fiona if she had any tampons while we were out together. She handed me one almost identical to the tampon I'd found in our backseat, and I breathed a sigh of relief. So the tampon, there was probably the same tampon here, and in all likelihood, there was an innocent explanation as to why it had been left in the backseat in the first place. I thought I'd seen the last of the out-of-place feminine hygiene products until I found another tampon this morning, this time in my sock drawer. I feel physically ill at the thought of my husband having an affair, and even more nauseated at the thought that the woman might have left these tampons out for me to find. If it was my husband's coworker, why would she give herself away by offering me one the other night? In any other situation, I would want to talk to my husband about this, but I feel too sick and embarrassed to approach him with what I've found. What should I do? Now for OP's first update. Contemplating every possible source of 2 tampons has been my personal hell for the past few weeks, but I wanted to share an update. Shortly after posting on here, I told my sister what happened. The tampon in the backseat and the sock drawer, my husband's cluelessness, the tampon from Fiona, and all the things I suspected but didn't want to believe. We compared tampons, save for the backseat one I had already discarded, and they were a match, just in different absorbencies. I hadn't left either at a place where my husband or daughters would have found them and moved them around. My daughters didn't know what they were or where they had come from. My sister was convinced it was Fiona either fucking my husband, fucking with me, or both. Direct confrontation of either party still seemed like a bad idea, so she suggested inviting Fiona and her husband over for our Labor Day barbecue. Unfortunately, they already had plans. My sister and I agreed that it was too soon for cameras without any other evidence, so it was just a waiting game from there. Watching my husband for any changed behavior. There was none, our house for any misplaced or foreign items. There were none, and even the girls for any new friends they might have met. My sister's husband was adamant on this last point, and partly why he was inclined to believe that the tampons were harmless, if anything had been happening in or around our home. He said it would be nearly impossible to keep it from me and the girls, since my husband was the one taking them to and from daycare, and most other activities during the week. I felt a good bit of consolation in that. It wasn't until my younger daughter came down with something last week that I felt any differently. I wanted to be the one home taking care of her, but my husband insisted that I stay at work while he stayed home with her. I was okay with that. My sister and her husband figured it was a good sign that he would take the time off at a moment's notice, and at that point, we were all already beginning to put the tampon fiasco behind us. By the 3rd or 4th day, I was just happy to see a near-healthy child and a husband who was helping see her through it. Toward the end of that week, though, I came home to something strange. The toddler that I'd left that morning in an old PJ set was now dressed in a onesie I'd never seen before, with a tiny clip in her hair. I can't say I have the sharpest memory, but I have a pretty good sense of what my kids wear on a day-to-day basis, and particularly what kinds of clothes they wear. I'd sworn off the full-length sleep suits with snaps across the front long before we'd ever had our second. The long snaps are just a pain in the ass and a no-go for efficient diaper changes, in my opinion. It's just not something I would dress her in, and my husband knows as much. He doesn't plan for or buy the girls' clothes, and he certainly doesn't accessorize them. So I was bewildered and kind of floored at the thought of someone around our sick child without my knowledge. I didn't think twice, and I went straight to my husband to ask if anyone had been over to see him or the girls. He seemed confused, like before, and asked me why I would think that. It had just been him and the kids all day. I asked him again if someone had so much as stopped by to say hello, and he denied it. He told me to calm down. I might have lashed out and come forward with the accusations right then and there, but our older daughter was in the room and she sensed something was up. In a calmer voice, I asked him a 3rd time if anyone had been around our children, and my husband swore that the girls hadn't been around anyone but him. He also denied buying new clothes or doing anyone's hair. With our daughter in the room and my emotions all over the place, I decided to leave it. I couldn't make sense of it then, and it hardly seems clearer now, after I've driven myself half crazy with explanations that aren't adding up. And now, for OP's final update. After nearly losing my mind over a hair clip and a onesie, I realized I wasn't getting anywhere with the accusations and half-baked guesswork. I'd gotten so absorbed in the paranoia and misery of my situation that I wasn't sleeping, eating, or caring for my kids the way I should have been, and I wasn't getting any answers. so I decided to pull the trigger on the hidden cameras and have them shipped to my sister's house, with my brother-in-law agreeing to help with the install and setup over at mine. Before the cameras were ever delivered though, I got my long-awaited confirmation last week. A ring notification had alerted me to motion at the front door while I was at work, half expecting to see a delivery person, pet, or lawn care salesman for the 15th time. You can imagine my surprise when I saw a clip of a young woman leading my daughter into the house hand in hand with my husband and other daughter close behind them. The girls were supposed to be in daycare and my husband at work. The woman, as far as I knew, was living 2 states away with a court order keeping her there. I immediately called my husband to ask him what the fuck this woman was doing in our house. He didn't answer, so I texted it to him. Even in his stupidity, he probably realized he had messed up by going through the front door, knew I had gotten the ring notification and wanted to delay the inevitable. By the 5th or 6th subsequent call though, he did pick up. The woman on the camera was my husband's sister. As I would come to find out later, she was the likely source of both tampons, the onesie and the bow. She is also a registered sex offender and a recovering addict, who spent the better part of her adolescence and young adulthood coercing the silence of another one of my husband's family members after she had molested them. I hadn't seen or heard from her in years, and from the way my husband talked about her, I didn't expect I ever would. But here she was, in our house, with our children. Suffice to say I was livid. It wasn't an affair at all, and still, somehow, infinitely more disgusting knowing who it was and why all of this had been happening. Apparently my sister-in-law, fresh off another stint in rehab, had wanted to reconnect and make amends with people she'd hurt, and my husband was high on that list. My husband didn't want me to know, or worse, try and keep her family, our children, away from her, so they'd been meeting in secret often at our house when I was at work. They would enter through the garage in my husband's car, so the ring camera at the front door wouldn't tip me off. She spent the night on a weekend I had been on a business trip and slept in our bed. She babysat our girls on a night my husband told me he had dropped them off at his parents'. She bought the girls clothes and dressed my youngest in the onesie and bow that my husband had promised on his life I had dressed her in myself. My husband swore this was all in my head. The tampons, the onesie, the bow, and all the rest. He was perfectly content to watch me agonize for weeks over a woman he insisted didn't exist, shrugging off each progressively more unsettling discovery like it was news to him and telling me I was being irrational. He insinuated that I was experiencing postpartum depression 2 years after I had given birth, 4 years after I had told him that one of my biggest fears for motherhood was to suffer PPD like my mother had with me, to not be fully present for our babies and be left with a world of guilt and regret as they grew older. He told me I wasn't sleeping enough, that I missed the girls too much, that I needed to take a step back and reevaluate the state of my mental health. I gave him the benefit of the doubt because he was my husband and because no other version of events made sense. Now, after a month of this mindfuck, I have nothing to show for my trust but this pathetic situation and a lot of anger.
Holy shit, OP. The level of gaslighting your husband has done to you is simply unbelievable. That alone should be enough reason for you to get a divorce. But let your good old creepy Uncle PattSun give an even better reason. He left your children alone with a sexual predator. If she's a registered sex offender, the likelihood that she is on an order preventing her from being alone with people under 16 is very high. And guess what? Your husband left her alone with your children. That is simply unforgivable. Call the cops and then call a divorce lawyer. Viewer support is the best way for me to remain independent and continue bringing you these daily videos, which will always be here on my channels for you to watch absolutely free. So please consider subscribing to me on Rumble and on YouTube. Both will be linked in the description box down below. Thanks for listening, everyone. If you even somewhat enjoyed today's story, make sure to give this video a thumbs up, and if you really like it, consider subscribing to PattSun to never miss a future upload. Stay strong.